Hi guys, it's Princess Mia. I am back with another video, and today I will be reading Mulan to you guys, which is a very, very good book. I couldn't find any Mulan-based outfits that I had, so I went with very nice Mickey print. But it's leopard print. So I thought that'd be pretty cute today, though I did find this very adorable little comb that reminded me of something from the movie, so I did decide to wear it today. And on Sunday, I will be reading Cinderella, which is really good, and I'll have a very fancy outfit prepared for that, which I think you guys will absolutely adore. But today, we're just going to do chapters 1 to 6 in Mulan, so let's get started, shall we? We're going to start with the prologue. For thousands of years, life was good in the land of China. People worked hard, tilling the soil and reaped the gifts of the good earth. But then one day, barbaric Huns attacked from the north, and they destroyed villages and burned temples. The people lived in fear, and the emperor ordered a great wall to be built along the Chinese border to keep out the enemy and protect his people. Years passed. Each new emperor added to the wall stone by stone for hundreds of years. At last, the Great Wall of China wove through the mountains like a dragon, and for a long time there was peace. But then one day, a bloodthirsty new warrior rose up to lead the Huns. His name was Shan Yu, and even the Great Wall could not keep him out. General Li, leader of the Imperial Army, hurried to the throne room to tell the Emperor the news. The Huns had crossed the border. "We'll set up defenses around your palace immediately," General Li assured the Emperor. "No," the conservative ruler replied. "Send your troops to defend my people." "Chief Fu," the Emperor called to his chief aide. Chief Fu stood at attention. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Deliver army papers throughout the land," the Emperor commanded. "Call up reserves and as many new recruits as possible. I will not take any chances. A single grain of rice can tip the scale." He gazed out the window and at the land he loved. One man may be the difference between victory and defeat. Chapter 1. In a small Chinese village, a young woman named Fa Mulan bent over a scroll she was studying for a test. How could they possibly expect for me to remember all this, she wondered with a frown. Then she had an idea. She dipped her brush into a pot of black ink. As she read, she copied the words onto her arms, words that told her how to be the perfect Chinese woman. "She must be quiet, graceful, polite," she wrote. She stopped to use chopsticks to shove another hearty bite of rice into her mouth. Mumbling over the food, she went on, refined, poised, always on time. "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" Mulan's eyes flew to the window. I'm late," she cried, and she still hadn't fed the chickens. Mulan scrambled to her feet. She couldn't be late today of all days. She needed help, and fast. "Little brother," she called out, running through the house. "Little brother!" There he was, lying on the ground, her adorable little dog. "Who's the smartest doggy in the world? Come on, smart boy." Mulan tied a small bag of chicken feed to her dog's tail. Next, she tied a bone to a stick, and then she hooked that to her dog's collar so the bone dangled over the dog's head. Grinning, she opened the door. Zip! The dog dashed into the yard, chasing the bone that danced inches beyond his nose. As he ran, the sack of chicken feed spilled across the yard. The chickens clucked and squawked as they pecked the grain. Maybe that's the way to feed the chickens every morning, Mulan thought, proud of herself. Smiling, she ran to fix her father's morning tea. Mulan's father, Fa Zhao, walked stiffly into the family's temple. First he lit some smoky incense, then he used his cane to lower himself carefully to his knees before the stone tablets of his ancestors. He was not that old a man, but some days the old war wound in his leg made him feel positively ancient. Fa Zhao often prayed to his ancestors about important matters, but today he had only one thought on his mind, his daughter Mulan, his greatest joy and his greatest concern. She was not like most young girls. She would rather dash over the hills on that horse of hers than dress up demurely. She spoke her mind even though it was a woman's place to be unheard and unseen. A smile tugged at Fa Zhao's lips. And smart. Mulan was always thinking up new ways to do things. He feared his wife found little joy or humor in Mulan's behavior. Fa Li tried to raise her daughter in the ancient traditions as she herself had been raised. Fa Zhao sighed. He knew there was there was but one path for a young girl in China, one way to bring honor to herself and to her family. First, she must please the matchmaker who would find her a good husband, so that she could become an obedient wife and a daughter-in-law. And to do that, she must be ladylike, graceful, and quiet. Fa Zhao sighed and bowed his head again. He had his work cut out for him. Honorable ancestors, he prayed, please help Mulan impress the matchmaker today. Mulan's dog, little brother, burst into the sacred temple with a bone dangling over his head. Bark, bark, bark. Seconds later, feathers flew as a flock of chickens ran in after him. Fa Zhao sighed. He knew this was Mulan's doing. He bent his head to pray some more. His unusual daughter needed all the help she could get. Mulan hurried, but not to the matchmakers. She was hurrying to the temple to take her father his morning tea. Father, she called out, I brought you your... Crash. She ran into her father just as he stepped from the temple. Fa Zhao managed to catch the teapot with the crook of his cane, but the teacup smashed to the steps. Don't worry, Mulan said, well aware of her shortcomings. I brought a spare. Mulan, her father began. Remember, Mulan said as she poured steaming tea into the delicate cup, the doctor said 3 cups of tea in the morning. Mulan, and 3 at night, she went on. Mulan, her father exclaimed, you should already be in town. There are no second chances with the matchmaker. We're counting on you to uphold the family honor. Mulan flashed him a reassuring grin. Don't worry, father, I won't let you down. She held her arm behind her back so he couldn't see the cheat sheet she'd written on it. Wish me luck. Hurry, her father called as she ran for her horse. He turned and went back into the temple, just in case he'd better pray some more. Mulan's mother waited in the village. She stared down the busy street while carts and rickshaws whizzed past. Where was Mulan? I should have prayed to the ancestors for luck, Fa Li anxiously said to Grandmother Fa. The old woman shook her head. How lucky can they be? They're dead. But then she held up something, a present she had just bought for Mulan in the marketplace. A tiny cricket in a small bamboo cage. Crickets were known to be good luck, and Grandma Fa believed in good luck charms, but first Grandma Fa decided to test this cricket's luck. She covered her eyes and held out the cage and walked straight into the middle of the busy street. Carts and rickshaws crashed into one another as they swerved to avoid the old woman. Miraculously, she made it safely to the other side. Grandma Fa called out in delight, Yup, this cricket's a lucky one! Inside the cage, the little cricket fainted. Now we're in chapter 2. Fa Li, the village bather said impatiently, Is your daughter here yet? Fa Li put on a pleasant smile. She'd been taught to wear even when she was not smiling on the inside. I'm sure Mulan will be here soon. Soon Mulan was racing toward the village on the back of her horse, Khan. How she loved the rhythm of galloping horses. The wind whistled past her ears and made her feel wild and free. At last Khan slowed to a halt. As the dust settled, she jumped from the horse and hurried toward her mother. I'm here! Fa Li frowned at her daughter. The girl was a complete mess. She was covered in dust and her hair was tangled with leaves and twigs. Mulan's smile faded as she looked at her mother's exasperated expression. What? Fa Li said not a word, but she grabbed her daughter by the hand and marched her to the bather's shop. But, Mama, I had to... None of your excuses, her mother said sternly. Let's get you bathed. Soon Mulan sat, shivering in a tub full of soapy water. Her mother and the village bather began to scrub her from head to toe. It's freezing, she wailed. It would have been warm if you'd been here on time, her mother pointed out. She began to scrub her arm. She stopped and stared. Mulan, what's this? Mulan muttered. In case I forgot something? Fa Li rolled her eyes heavenward and prayed. Grandmother Fa headed out to the village shops. We'll need more luck than I thought. Next, Mulan's mother hurried her into the hairdresser's shop. 2 women pulled and yanked her long black hair as they fought the tangles into a respectable hairdo. At the dressmaker's, they stuffed Mulan into a beautiful silk dress, but they pulled it so tight she could hardly breathe. At the makeup shop, her eyes were lined to make them dark and mysterious. Her face was dusted with white rice powder. Red rouge was rubbed into her cheeks and lips. And when they were finished, Mulan gazed into the mirror. Who is that girl, she thought. She was lovely, but a total stranger. Mulan took a tiny piece of hair and curled it over her forehead. There, that was a little better. Fa Li unwrapped a piece of cloth. Inside lay a beautiful decorative comb. Smiling happily, she tucked it into her daughter's hair. There, my daughter, now you are ready. Mulan sighed. She wanted more than anything to please her mother and father and to bring honor to the family. If this was what it took, a little makeup, uncomfortable clothes, well, she could bear it if she made them happy. Grandma Fa pushed in between them. Not yet, she had more gifts for Mulan. Gifts of tradition that must not be forgotten. An apple for serenity, a pendant for balance, and beads of jade for beauty. Then she tied the tiny bamboo cage to Mulan's waist and a cricket for good luck. At last, Mulan was ready to meet the matchmaker. Mulan gulped as she joined the other young women in front of the matchmaker's house. The time had come. Her entire future and her family's honor rested on her success with the matchmaker. Ancestors, she persuaded, help me not to make a fool of myself. Fa Mulan. Mulan looked up eagerly into the face of the matchmaker and waved her hand. Present, she shouted loud and clear. The matchmaker frowned and scribbled on her tablet. Speaking without permission. Oops. Mulan followed the matchmaker into her house. The matchmaker circled her and looked her up and down. Mulan felt as if she were a horse to be bought and sold. The matchmaker clucked her tongue. Too skinny. Not good for bearing sons. As she wrote more notes, Creaky escaped from his cage and hopped onto the matchmaker's shoulder. Yikes, that was all she needed. Mulan picked off the tiny cricket just as the matchmaker turned around. Without thinking, Mulan popped the cricket into her mouth to hide it. Still, she smiled. Now that was poise. Recite the final admonition, the matchmaker ordered. The moment of truth, and Mulan was caught with a mouthful of cricket. Well, the matchmaker demanded. Mulan flicked open her fan to hide her face and spat the cricket into the palm of her hand. Then she began to recite. Fulfill your duties calmly and, thankfully she made those notes on her arm. She pushed up her sleeve and stole a peek. Oh no! The bath had smeared the ink. She squinted at the words, trying to read, respectfully. Reflect before you act. The matchmaker stared at her suspiciously. This shall bring you glory and honor, Mulan concluded. Whew. Suddenly the matchmaker snatched the fan. The girl must be cheating, but she found nothing. Scowling, she grabbed Mulan's arm and led her to a small table. Now pour tea. Mulan nearly gasped. The ink on her arm had rubbed off onto the matchmaker's hand. Nervously, Mulan knelt. To please your future in-laws. The matchmaker said, You must demonstrate a sense of dignity and refinement. And the old woman stroked her face imperiously and left an inky black mustache. Mulan gawked and accidentally poured the tea onto the table. She quickly recovered and poured the tea into the matchmaker's cup, but panicked when she noticed the little cricket relaxing in the tea. The matchmaker went on, You must be able to be poised. Pardon me, Mulan began, and silent. Silent. The matchmaker glared at Mulan and then raised the cricket-filled teacup toward her lips. Could I just take that back for a moment? Mulan asked nervously. She grabbed the cup and pulled. Splash! The tea spilled down the front of the matchmaker's dress along with the tiny cricket. The matchmaker screamed and jumped to her feet. Why, you clumsy! Crash! The matchmaker knocked over the incense burner and landed in the hot coals. Mulan tried to help. She fanned at the matchmaker's backside, trying to cool the heat. Whoosh! The matchmaker's hot clothes burst into flames. Mulan ran into the streets carrying the teapot. The matchmaker shoved past her, screaming, Put it out! Put it out! Mulan yanked off the tea lid and threw tea at the flames. The liquid put out the fire, but the matchmaker was soaked. Her face was steaming. Mulan's cheeks burned with shame as curious villagers gathered in the street to whisper and stare. You are a disgrace, the matchmaker shouted loud enough for all to hear. You may look like a bride, but you will never bring your family honor. Chapter 3 now, guys. Mulan's feet dragged as she led Khan home and through the front gate. Her father was waiting for her, smiling hopefully. Mulan gulped. She couldn't face him. She couldn't bear to see the shame and disappointment in his eyes when he learned of her failure. She hid behind Khan as she led him to the stable. As Khan drank from his trough, Mulan stared at her reflection in the water. She had tried to play the part of the perfect bride and the perfect daughter, but she had failed again and again. And if I were truly to be myself, I'd break my family's heart. Mulan wandered in garden and sat down on a bench beneath a tree heavy with pink blossoms, thinking of her mother's shame. She removed the beautiful comb from her hair. Behind her, someone cleared his throat. Father! Surely by now he must be aware of her disgraceful failure. Mulan knew she deserved a scolding. She bowed her head obediently, waiting for her father to speak. Fa Zhao sat down beside her. He took his time, as if searching for the perfect words, but when he spoke, his voice held no anger. What beautiful blossoms we have this year, he said, staring into the tree above them. But look. His hand touched a blossom that had yet to open. This one is late, he said softly. He took the comb from Mulan's hand and tucked it into her hair. But I'll bet that when it blooms, it will be the most beautiful of all. Mulan could hardly believe it. Her father was not angry. She smiled at him. His gentle words soothed her. Suddenly, a sound like thunder rumbled through the garden. Fa Zhao rose to his feet and leaned heavily upon his cane, and a frown creased his brow. Together they joined Fa Li and Grandmother Fa at the front gate. A villager was pounding a huge drum as soldiers galloped into town. Mulan, her mother called sharply, stay inside. Behind them, Grandma Fa winked and motioned toward the wall. Quickly, Mulan scrambled up so she could see. Citizens, cried Shifu, the emperor's aide. I bring proclamation from the imperial city. The Huns have invaded China. The crowd gasped, but this was frightening news indeed. The man held up the proclamation and read, By order of the emperor, one man from every family must serve in the imperial army. Then he began to call out names. The Hazao family. A middle-aged man came forward to take his papers. The Yi family. Saw a bent old man steps from the crowd, along with his tall, strong-looking young son. I will serve the emperor in my father's place, the young man declared. The Fa family. A chill ran down Mulan's spine. No, she whispered. The crowd murmured. Everyone knew of Fa Zhao's past service in the emperor's army. They knew of his injury. Mulan's father handed his cane to his wife and then gathered his strength. He proudly stepped forward. I am ready to serve the emperor. Mulan jumped from the wall and ran into the street. Father, she cried, you cannot go. Mulan, her father said, his voice full of warning. Please, sir, she begged the soldier. My father has already fought bravely for the emperor. Silence, Shifu bellowed. He glared at Fa Zhao. You would do well to teach your daughter to hold her tongue in a man's presence. Mulan winced at the look of shame on her father's face. Mulan, he said curtly, you dishonor me. She felt a hand on her arm as Grandma Fa led her away. Behind her she heard Chifu tell her father, report to the Wu Zhao camp tomorrow. Yes, sir. Fa Zhao replied, then he walked proudly past his wife with the eyes of the villagers and soldiers upon him. He refused to take his cane. Chifu called out other names, but Mulan heard none of them. Only one name mattered to her, her father's. Later that day, Mulan peeked into her father's room. Fa Zhao stood before the cabinet that held his armor. He took out his magnificent sword with great skill. He sliced the shining blade through the air as if challenging Shang Yu himself in battle. Suddenly he gasped and grasped his leg in pain. The sword clattered to the floor as he crumpled to his knees. Slowly and painfully he pulled himself to his feet. Mulan pressed herself against the wall so her father would not see her. Her heart pounded as she faced the truth. If her father went to the war, she knew he would not return. That night at dinner, Mulan could barely eat. Her father, mother, and grandmother ate in silence. How can they be so calm? Mulan thought angrily. This could be our last night together. Forever. At last she could hold it no longer. She slammed down her cup, splashing tea onto the table. You shouldn't have to go, she cried. Mulan, her mother cautioned. But Mulan ignored her mother's warning and jumped to her feet. There are plenty of young men to fight for China. Fa Zhao looked up from the rice bowl and said calmly, It is an honor to protect my country and my family. So you'll die for honor? Mulan challenged. I will die for doing what's right. But if you... I know my place, her father bellowed, and then his voice grew quiet and stern. It is time you learned yours. Tears stung Mulan's eyes. How could he speak to her that way? Didn't he understand her concern for him? Without another word, she ran from the table out and into the night. There, all alone, she let her tears fall. Chapter 4. Mulan sat at the foot of the great stone dragon that stood in the middle of her family's garden. With a troubled expression, she stared at her reflection in the puddle. Lightning streaked across the sky, thunder roared, startling her from her thoughts. Across the garden, a light glowed from her parents' window. She could see her father's silhouette as he tried to comfort her mother, but her mother only pulled away. Moments later, her father blew out the candle, plunging the room into darkness. Mulan ignored the raindrops that soaked her hair and spilled down her face. For she had come to a decision. She knew what she must do. That was just chapter 4. Mulan splashed through the puddles as she ran for the temple. Inside, she lit a stick of incense and placed it in a tiny dragon's incense holder. She did not know that someone watched her as she said a quick prayer. The tiny good luck cricket that her grandmother had given her that morning. When she scrambled to her feet and hurried out, Cricket hopped after her. Dripping wet, Mulan slipped into the house. Thunder and lightning hid the sound of her footsteps as she tiptoed to her parents' room. Good, they're asleep. As silent as a shadow, she stole into their room. With trembling fingers, she slid her father's army papers from the table beside their bed. In its place, she left the comb from her hair. She gazed at her father tenderly for a moment, then fled from the room. Alone in the front room, she held up her father's sword. For a moment she hesitated. The thing she was about to do could not be undone, but do it she must. Whack! With one flash of the blade, she sliced off her long black hair. Out in the stables, Khan whined in alarm. A warrior stood in the shadows, but then the figure stepped forward. Mulan, dressed in her father's armor, reached out to calm her horse. She had chosen her path, a road very different from the one her parents wished for her. She would pretend to be her father's son. She would fight in his place to save his life. Mulan knew the danger well. It was against Chinese law for a female to be a soldier. The penalty was certain death, but her heart told her, go on. And so she leapt onto Khan and galloped out the front gate. Boom! Grandma Fa bolted upright in her bed, her eyes wide. Something was wrong. Her slippers slackened the floor as she hurried through the darkened house, checking here, checking there, and then she burst into her son's room. Mulan is gone! Mulan's parents sat up in alarm. Fa Zhao's eyes fell upon the nightstand. He picked up Mulan's comb with trembling fingers. It can't be. He ran to his closet. His armor and sword were gone, too. He rushed into the rainy courtyard. Mulan, he wailed, but his only answer was the banging of the front gate in the pouring rain. His daughter was gone, and there was no doubt in his mind what she intended to do. Fa Li rushed to her husband's side. You must go after her. She could be killed. If I reveal her, Fa Zhao replied, she will be. Grandma Fa pleaded, ancestors, hear our prayer. Watch over Mulan. Wind gusted into the Fa family temple. It's chapter 5 right now, guys. Blowing out the candles and the incense Mulan had left burning in the darkness. The spirit of the first ancestor appeared. Mushu! He shouted at the dragon incense burner. Awaken! The incense burner trembled, and then from the thick smoke curling around it, a living dragon appeared. But it was a mini dragon. I live! He crowed, rubbed his hands together, ready to go to the work. So tell me, what more needs my protection, great ancestor? You just say the word, and I'm there. The first ancestor rolled his eyes, then pointed at the stone animals that lined the room. These are the family guardians, and they, Mushu shrugged, protect the family. And you, O demoted one. Mushu hung his head. Ring the gong. The first ancestor nodded. Now wake up the ancestors. Mulan sighed. One family reunion coming up. He muttered, and then he picked up his stick and began to wham the daylights out of the gong. Okay, people, look alive, rise and shine. You're all way past the beauty sleep thing, trust me. Slowly, the room filled with the spirits of the Fa ancestors. I knew it, one complained right away. That Mulan was a troublemaker from the start. Don't look at me, the one beside her replied. She gets it from your side of the family. She's just trying to help her father, another protested. But if she's discovered, another put in, Fa Zhao will be forever shamed. Dishonor would come to the family. My children never caused such trouble, one said smugly. Let a guardian bring her back, another cried. An excited murmur swept through the room. The first ancestor nodded. We must send the most powerful of all. Mushu the little dragon stood up proud and tall. I'll go. Laughter shook the temple. You had your chance to protect the Fa family, and ancestor scolded. Your mistake led Fa Dang to disaster. Across the room, the spirit of Fa Dang held his head in his hands. Yeah, thanks a lot. Mulan stared blankly. Your point is? The first ancestor floated toward Mushu. The point is, we'll be sending a real dragon to bring Mulan back. But I am a real dragon, Mushu cried. You are not worthy of this task, the first ancestor scoffed. Now go! Awaken the great stone dragon. And with that, he tossed the tiny dragon out the temple door. Mushu shuffled into the garden, so he messed up a previous assignment. So what? Anyone can make a mistake. How many centuries were they going to hold that against him? At last he reached the great stone dragon. He leaned back, staring way up into the statue's stony face. What makes him so special? Mushu wondered with a sigh. He began to bang his gong. Yo, Rocky, wake up! You gotta go fetch Mulan. Come on, boy, go get her! But the great stone dragon didn't move. Mushu began to climb up in its side. Hello, he shouted, still no answer. So Mushu reared back and whack! He struck the great stone dragon on the ear with his gong. Uh-oh, the ear broke off in his hand. Mushu tried to stick the ear back on, but it was no use. With the great shudder, the entire great stone dragon crumbled to the ground. When the dust cleared, Mushu poked his head out of the rubble. The great stone dragon's stony face, the only piece left intact, stared back at him with sightless eyes. Oh, man! Mushu groaned. They're gonna kill me. Great stone dragon, have you awakened? Mushu froze. It was the voice of the first ancestor who gazed out the window of the temple. Mushu did the only thing he could think of. He faked it. He raised the face of the great stone dragon above the bushes. He lowered his voice and answered, Ah, yes, I just woke up. I am the great stone dragon. I will go forth and fetch Mulan. Go, the first ancestor called. The fate of the Fa family rests in your claws. Don't even worry about it, Mushu answered. I will not lose face. But as he said it, the weight of the stone dragon's head tipped him over backwards, and he tumbled down the hill. At the bottom of the hill, the little dragon sat up, frowning. Now what? I'm doomed, and all because Miss Man decided to take her little masquerade show on the road. Suddenly, Mushu felt a tug on his tail. He glanced down at a little cricket chirped up at him. What do you mean, go get her? Mushu asked. You crazy, the ancestors don't want me near her. He jerked his head toward the rock pile that used to be the great stone dragon. After all I've done, I've had to make her a hero to get back into the temple. He dropped his head into his hands, but then he sat up, a look of astonishment on his face. That's it! I'll make Mulan a hero. The ancestors will forgive me, and I'll get my old job back. He threw back his head and laughed. Ooh, brilliant! Creaky the cricket hopped off toward the gate. Mushu followed. What do you think you're coming? Are you coming? He demanded. The cricket chirped. You're lucky, Mushu laughed. Do I look like a sucker? Cricket chirped an answer. No, you look like a loser. Who's a loser? Mushu chased the little cricket down the road. Many miles away, horses' hooves thundered through a forest. Suddenly, the lead horseman signaled the others to stop. With a wave of his hand, he sent 5 of his best men into the brush. Shang Yu, the fierce leader of the Huns, jumped down from his horse as he waited. His falcon landed on his arm. Soon his men returned and threw 2 Chinese soldiers at their feet. Nice work, gentlemen. Shang Yu growled at the frightened scouts. You found the Han army. The Emperor will stop you, one soldier bravely countered. Stop me? Shan Yu asked in a mock surprise. He invited me. He grabbed the second soldier by his shirt front and raised him in the air. By building his wall, he challenged my strength. Well, I'm here to play his game. With a laugh, he threw the sweating soldier to the ground. Go, tell the Emperor to send his strongest armies. The 2 Imperial soldiers ran off as fast as they could. Shang Yu thought. He turned to his archer. How many men does it take to deliver a message? The archer grinned and put an arrow in his bow. 1. Now we've stopped at chapter 6. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I will be back with part 2 tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please like and subscribe this video, and I hope you really enjoyed the first part, because I enjoyed reading it. Thank you very much, guys. Later!